All right, let's dive right into one of the biggest and most powerful ideas in all of science, evolution. We're going to break down how it works, what really drives it, and maybe most importantly, how it's still shaping our world in some pretty surprising ways. So let's start with a really big question. Just look around you. Think about the incredible variety of life on this planet, from the tiniest bacteria to the biggest blue whale, from mushrooms to monkeys. How do we get all of this from the simplest possible start? The answer, in a word, is evolution. So let's figure out what that really means.
So, what is evolution, really? It's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and it can sound super complicated. But the core idea? It's actually incredibly simple. Let's just start with a straight-up definition.
Okay, there it is. Now, don't let the formal language trip you up. The two big things to grab onto here are heritable characteristics, we're talking about traits passed down through DNA, and over successive generations. This is key. We're not talking about changes in a single lifetime, like you getting stronger from working out. This is about how the genetic recipe of an entire population shifts bit by bit from one generation to the next.
So how does this change actually kick off? Well, I like to think of it like a recipe. You can't bake a cake without some basic ingredients, right? Same for evolution. For it to even get started, you absolutely need two essential things.
And here they are, our two core ingredients. First up, hereditary. It's pretty straightforward. Kids inherit traits from their parents through DNA. And second, variation. This one is crucial. Within any group of living things, there have to be differences. If every single individual were a perfect clone, nothing could ever change. Makes sense, right?
Okay, so where do these all-important differences come from? Well, the ultimate source is mutation. These are just random little changes in the DNA code that create brand new traits. Then you have sexual reproduction, which is basically just shuffling all those existing genes into new combinations, like shuffling a deck of cards. And finally, there's gene flow. That's just what happens when individuals move from one population to another, bringing their unique genes with them.
Okay, so we've got our ingredients. Traits are passed down, and there are differences between individuals. But ingredients just sit there, right? You need something to drive the change. You need an engine. So let's look at the mechanisms that actually push evolution forward.
The most famous engine, of course, is natural selection. And honestly, the best way to get a handle on it is with a classic real-world example. It's a perfect little case study, the story of the peppered moth in England. Picture this. It's England, way back in 1848, before the big industrial revolution really took off. Back then, pretty much all the peppered moths were this light speckled color. And for good reason, it was perfect camouflage against the lichen-covered trees. Any rare dark moths which popped up due to a random mutation stuck out like a sore thumb. They were an easy lunch for hungry birds.
And then everything changed. Factories started pumping out soot that killed the light-colored lichen and turned the tree bark black. Suddenly, the tables were completely turned. The environment changed, which created a new selection pressure. Now, the light moths were easy to spot, while the dark ones blended in perfectly. So the dark moths survived longer, had more baby moths, and passed on their genes for being dark.
And just look at this. Fast forward about 100 years to 1959, and the population had totally flipped. The dark moths, once incredibly rare, now made up almost the entire population. This isn't just a theory on a page. It's a powerful, observable example of evolution in action, all driven by natural selection. But natural selection isn't the only engine running the show. There's also something called genetic drift. Now, if natural selection is about survival of the fittest, genetic drift is more like a game of pure chance. Imagine a small group of beetles, some green, some brown. What if someone just randomly steps on a few? And by pure, dumb luck, they happen to squish most of the brown ones. The next generation isn't going to be mostly green because green was better, it's just what was left. That's drift, and it has a much bigger effect in small populations. See, you take these engines, the careful filtering of natural selection and the random chance of genetic drift, and you let them run for, millions and millions of years. What do you get? You get two incredible results: adaptation and the mind-boggling diversity of life we see everywhere.
So, what's an adaptation? It's basically any trait that helps a creature get better at living in its environment. Think of a polar bear's thick fur coat, or a cactus's ability to store water. These are adaptations produced by natural selection, over vast stretches of time, fine-tuning organisms to their specific homes.
And this whole process, it leaves behind some amazing clues, some really powerful evidence for how all life is connected. And one of the coolest examples is something biologists call homologous structures.
This is just fascinating. Take a look at the bone structure of a human arm, a bat's wing, and a whale's flipper. I mean, they do totally different things, right? Grasping, flying, swimming. But if you look at the bones inside, it's the same fundamental blueprint. One big bone, two smaller bones, a bunch of little wrist bones, and then the digits. Why? The only explanation that makes sense is that they all inherited that basic design from a common ancestor, way back when.
And really, all of this leads to one of the most powerful and famous statements in all of biology, from Theodosius Stebjanski. It just captures it perfectly. Evolution isn't just one topic among many, it's the unifying idea, the thread that ties every single part of the life sciences together.
So you might be thinking, okay, moths and ancient bones. That's cool, but what does it have to do with me today? Well, it turns out, everything. Evolution is not some dusty old concept from a history book. It is happening all around us, right now.
For instance, in medicine, we are in a constant evolutionary arms race with bacteria that are evolving resistance to our best antibiotics. In agriculture, we're always trying to stay one step ahead of insect pests that evolved to survive our pesticides. We've even started using its principles in computer science to create amazing problem-solving programs that evolve better solutions.
And that brings us to one last really big thought. Evolution doesn't have an endpoint. It never stops. Life is constantly changing, adapting, and finding new ways. It's not a journey with some final destination. So the real question isn't just about where we all came from. It's where is all of this going next?